Renegade 3, the final chapter, is a scrolling beat-em-up video game released on the Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, MSX, and ZX Spectrum in 1989 by Ocean Software under their Imagine label. The game is a sequel to Target, Renegade, which itself is a sequel to the arcade game Renegade. Unlike the first two games, Renegade 3 follows the character known only as Renegade as he travels through time to rescue his captured girlfriend. It also dropped the two-player mode found in the previous title. It seems like only yesterday when the last one came out, doesn't it? We thought the first Renegade was dead and his brother had taken over for the sequels. But silly us, looks like we were wrong. Here's the original back looking pretty healthy, unless it's yet another member of the Renegade clan. Imagine's obviously had to think a bit more about what to do with 3, after all, it can't really just reproduce the same street gang beat-em-up formula forever, no matter how successful it might be. Renegade 3 has thus become much more of an arcade adventure than the previous two, with all sorts of fantastic and comical elements added willy-nilly. If you can ignore the fact that the whole idea is a wee bit silly, then it in fact adds a lot of spice to an overused formula. Get this for starters. Baddies from the future have whisked back to the present and captured Renegade's girlfriend. Exactly why isn't immediately clear, but you'd think the saucy minx would have learned by now that it's pretty dangerous to have anything to do with those pesky Renegade boys. Anyway, the baddies have taken her to their base in the future and in the meantime got rid of Renegade by throwing him backwards in time. He ends up in a prehistoric setting and must fight his way through that, an ancient Egyptian level, a medieval, or as the game has it, medieval, setting and a future level to rescue her. At the end of each one a grey coffin thing comes down and beams you to the next time zone, or asks you to do another load if you're in 48K, though you have to get there within the 6-minute time limit or the portal closes up and you're stuck in the past. It all strains credibility slightly, I feel. These are just surface differences, though. The most important ones are in the gameplay. For instance, instead of the normal large open fighting area you get in these sorts of games, much of each level has a raised catwalk at the back that you can climb up to at various points. You can use this to get past things like lava rivers if they're getting too much. The other major difference is in the style and character of the baddies. Instead of your standard street thug, you get some of the most bizarre creations, including flying characters that drop things on you. In nice yellow and gray tones, with some very sharp background graphics, especially in the Egyptian level, and a flip screen, it's all eminently playable. In effect then, you're halfway to a Rastan Sage or Karnov type game, but with the larger variety of combat moves that you get in a straight beat-em-up. These include a straight kick, a flying kick, a normal punch and a duck punch. For someone like me, who was getting bored sick of the average punch and kick game, this is a very welcome development indeed. The standard beat-em-up formula gets a bizarre fantasy twist, and it works. In this third edition your hero, the Renegade, has to venture across 4 levels to find his kidnapped girlfriend and save her. This requires walking, jumping, and fighting enemies until you reach the end of the stage. Then you do it again, and then again, until finally the game mercifully just ends. No special ending, no final boss fight. Just magically your girlfriend saves herself, and you, and its roll credits while we all regret the choices we made that drew us to Renegade 3. In comparison to the first two games, which at least went for a grounded style, this third game, for whatever reason, is a time-traveling adventure. The Renegade starts off in prehistoric times before venturing into ancient Egypt, medieval land, and then the future, battling thematically appropriate enemies in each stage. What this actually amounts to is cavemen and dinosaurs first, then Anubis soldiers and mummies, knights and jesters, and then aliens and robots. Not that any of these enemies feel all that different, even if they look different, as they all do the same things, run at you and punch. The smaller enemies will also jump around, like rabid flea men, and, well, that's it. Completing the game isn't all that difficult despite the game doing all it can to battle you annoyingly. Unlike in previous beat-em-up entries in this series, the enemies here don't come in controlled waves. Instead they just flood the screen, endlessly, mindlessly running at you until you have to stop and fight them. And you will have to fight them as every enemy in the game will do contact damage to you. Progress is made, then, in slow fits and starts as you have to fend off every enemy on the level so they don't whittle down your energy by sheer grace of existence. Additionally, there's both a built-in timer as well as a subtle timing system at play. Naturally, if the clock winds down on a stage before you reach the end you'll die, although you're unlikely to ever see this. At the same time your hero's energy is constantly, slowly winding down. Let it get too low and, of course, you die. There aren't any health pickups, but you can restore your energy by killing enemies, 1 bar per dead enemy, so you'll end up killing a lot of foes as the game goes on just to stay alive. That would be fine, I guess, if the combat was interesting, but it's truly mindless. Your guys can do 3 things: punch, crouch and punch, or jump kick. The punches are ineffectual, taking 3 to 4 punches to level an enemy. The kicks are better as they can generally kill any enemy in 1 hit, but the kick is also unwieldy. It has a weird hitbox and your character travels in a little arc as he jumps, as the jump kick is also his only means of jumping over terrain obstacles, meaning it can be hard to aim the kick hitbox up with the enemy you're trying to foot-face combo. There is one other combat option: weapons. If an enemy drops a weapon you can pick it up and swing it madly. This isn't as strong as the kick but is much easier to aim and will level basically anything in 2 hits. Weirdly, though, I only ever saw 1 weapon in the whole game, a club in prehistoric times. I grabbed this and made it my primary strategy for the whole of the game, only finally losing it in the 2 levels later in medieval times when I died once and it disappeared when I respawned in. I doubt there were other weapons, though, as none of the knights, or the aliens and bots to follow, ever dropped a weapon, so I think you can get that club and keep it or just use your fists and feet the rest of the time. It's so strange. As far as basic construction, once you've seen the first level you've seen them all. Stags are split between an upper and lower tier and you can traverse through either via ladders. There are little pits to jump over, and a lot of walking, and that's all there is to do across each stage. At the midpoint, and then again at the end point, the stage will stop scrolling forward and force you to battle a wave of enemies. Beat them enough and you can either progress past the midpoint or, at the end of the stage, the level just ends unceremoniously. Again, there are no boss fights or anything else to mark at job well done. You just mindless scroll and slap people until the game gives up and rolls the credits. Clearly this game was shoved out simply to use the Renegade name before it was worthless. This particular title, though, feels like it was simply some other crappy PC game that the developer simply slapped Renegade onto the box and called it a day. There is nothing here that screams, this is a sequel to Renegade. Everything about the original title is diluted and lost in this 3rd game in the sub-series, the core of what worked long ago forgotten so an unaffiliated group could show out cheap crap to unsuspecting fans. Make no mistake, Renegade 3, the final chapter is hot garbage. The best thing that can be said is that, yes, it really was the final game in this sub-series. I don't think I could have taken yet another awful game. Of course, if you only played these games on the NES you never even had to suffer as this title only came out for systems like the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amstrad, and the MSX. A small mercy indeed, all things considered. Though the game was highly praised by critics, receiving high scores in several prominent gaming publications such as a 91% score being awarded by Crash, and 84% in C+VG, it was derided by fans who criticized the game's storyline, lack of deep gameplay, weapons, glitches, poor physics, and lack of a 2-player option. The Spanish magazine Microhobby valued the game with the following scores. Originality, 30% graphics, 80% motion, 80% sound, 80% difficulty, 100% addiction, 80%. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a like, it's a quick and simple way to show support. Share this video with friends, family, or anyone you think might be interested. Your help with publicity is essential for the growth of the channel. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new content. Click the bell to receive notifications whenever we post something cool. I really appreciate your presence here. Your support makes all the difference. Continue following, sharing, and leaving your comments. We are building an amazing community together. See you in the next video.